Welcome to The Bottom Line, a wrap of the day's business news. And the main news happening in the last half hour or so. Fitch Ratings has revised the outlook, not our credit rating, but the outlook on our credit rating from stable to negative. So that's South Africa's long-term foreign currency issuer default, another way of saying our credit rating. The credit rating overall stays the same at BB+. The rating agency said the decision was based on a marked widening in the budget deficit as a result of lower economic growth. That means we're taking on more debt. And remember, the credit rating agencies are always worried about our debt burden. Fitch also expressing concern about increased spending, including support for state-owned enterprises. Fitch said the increases its projections for government debt to GDP and heightens the difficulty of stabilizing debt in the medium term. In its statement, Fitch said that metrics had deteriorated significantly due to the underperformance of revenue. That's the money coming in to the tax body. The agency expects this to worsen in the current year as growth has turned out to be even weaker than expected. The low trend GDP growth means that economic recovery isn't expected to drive a major fiscal improvement in later years. The National Treasury has responded to Fitch, saying it's aware of the strain and the risk that state-owned companies, particularly Eskom, present to the framework. Government says it's urgently working on stabilizing Eskom while developing a broad strategy for its future. The Treasury says government will have to make tough decisions in order to reverse the country's debt trajectory and improve our economic growth prospects. All right, and I can tell you that the Rand is not taking this very well. Let's take a look at that very quickly. So you could see that the Rand had weakened earlier in the week, and here about is the 14 Rand to the dollar mark. We had moved above that. Remember, when this graph is going up, it means the Rand is getting weaker because suddenly it takes more Rand to buy $1. And you can see the effect around about here, this heightening right now. We're at about 14 Rand 27 at the moment. So we are well above 14 Rand to the dollar after we were starting the week below 14 Rand to the dollar. This is quite a knee-jerk reaction. Let's get some analysis now. We're joined by economist on the line, Xhanti Payi. Xhanti, thank you so much for being with us. So let's just put this in perspective, because Fitch already had us in junk status. They haven't even downgraded us, but they've changed the outlook. How serious is that?
Good evening, and good evening to the viewers. I think one of the interesting things, of course, about that is actually, let me just say this because I think it's interesting. I was in the UK just recently, and I hope this deterioration would have happened. Then I would have had more money to spend when I come back home and I bring the change. But that didn't happen, right? Because it always brings some change. But on an interesting note, the marker is also to look at all the other, Moody's has not downgraded us, and everybody has been expecting some sort of downgrade. And so Fitch is actually saying, look, all the things that we are watching you guys for, that we've been saying are worrying, are the things that you are continuing to do anyway. So the first thing, of course, is which I suppose maybe it depends on how we think about it, is the growth trajectory. Remember, our taxes, which is how we pay for all our debts, is how we collect revenue. So if our economy is not growing, it means we are not collecting enough income from whether it's businesses or it's individuals, which means that we cannot pay our debts. And on top of that, we are actually adding the burden from which we are actually now allocating much more funding into the SOEs. We know, as you were mentioning in your report, that we are actually now adding more money into Eskom. That money has to come from somewhere. And between the growth, which is actually where we actually collect revenue, and the extra needs or extra burden to the purse, to the public purse, it means something has to give. And I think that's the worry they're expressing. They're saying, look, we are no longer sure that you guys are sustainable in terms of your ability to pay and the continuation of adding more and more responsibility to already stretched pockets. And I think that's something that we've had to watch for a while. You mentioned Moody's, and is that the real concern here? So Moody's is the only one that doesn't have us in junk status, and maybe if Fitch is concerned, Moody's may follow suit and actually downgrade us. Then we're in junk status across all of them. Absolutely, and the Moody's one is actually the most serious one, given the fact that they actually, if we were to lose Moody's, we would have a big avalanche of money leaving South Africa. Because remember, and I think you explained it quite well in terms of a deterioration in the rand, when you were saying the more that graph goes up, it means actually we need more rands to buy a dollar. Because when people start to sell the rand because they are leaving South Africa, they are worried. Because much of the reason why the rand will weaken is because people are running away from South Africa. They are selling their assets and they are actually no longer want to buy our debt, which is our bonds, because they don't think buying debt in South Africa is a good thing, because actually we may not be able to pay. And that's what really this is about. We are not growing, which means they're not collecting more income. And how do we pay people who we owe money? We pay them through our taxes. And they're worried that the taxes we will collect in the coming year or in the coming years will just not be enough to pay them. And that's their big problem. Yeah. And so to overburden ourselves to continuing supporting these SOEs that seemingly are not doing the right things. Remember, also, they've told us how they see us actually being able to turn the corner. And we don't seem to be actually doing those things. The Reserve Bank called it structural economic adjustments. We're not doing that. Yeah.
If you look at government statement, they're saying that they understand the strain that state-owned companies are putting the country under, but they have to stabilize Eskom. Is government right now, I know you're talking about structural change, but today, between a rock and a hard place, they have to give Eskom the bailout, but that's what's concerning the credit rating agencies.
Yes, and I think one of the key issues, remember we said, one of the key things with governance, but governance is not the only thing that would actually comfort these agencies, because they have to see other kinds of adjustments being done there. So if you say, for example, we know that the kind of things that put Eskom under pressure, for example, we will talk about the wage bill, they will talk about the cost of Eskom, the cost structures of Eskom. What has been done outside of just changing the board and the management? And of course, all of us have seen the headlines of the CEO leaving at Eskom, having somebody acting. So they're worried and they're saying, look, it's one thing for you guys to say, we have to save Eskom. But what are you actually doing to save Eskom apart from feeding it money? Yeah. That has been probably one of our biggest problems, is that we are not showing our agencies or those who owe money or those we will need to borrow more money from in order to continue to support Eskom. To say, look, guys, we need this money because these are the changes we are making at Eskom. Those things are not apparent, and I think that's why these agencies are so worried, because they are saying, if you have to advise investors, we need to know what it is that you're advising them against. And that's our big problem. We're not showing them the kinds of things we're doing, apart from the fact that we had a board. The things that have happened since then, in terms of even having CEOs in the SABC, for example, saying, look, I've been trying to make changes, but I'm not getting the support to make those changes. It's something that concerns a lot of people who would lend us money.
Yeah, so huge concerns about SOEs. Before we let you go, when could the big hammer fall? When is Moody's likely to show its hand?
It's hard to say, because, they've got those cyclical reviews that they give, and that is a couple of months away. But because of the concerns, they can actually have out of cycle, where they actually look and they say the risk is too heightened right now, that we actually have to do something. So we could see the next number, I think, for the second quarter is going to come in, I think, at some point in August. So if they look at that growth number, if they look at the forecast that we are getting, if they look at some of the spending that's coming through, they could look at all of that and say, look, maybe we don't have to wait until later in the year. Let's make a decision now. So it could be anywhere, even as near as August, which is right upon us. So I think that's something that we should be concerned about. And I think you can see from the Treasury that that's something that they are worried about. But whether or not it's something they can do anything about is another discussion.
Yeah, August just around the corner, and investors are worried. We're seeing that reflected in the rand tonight. Thank you very much, economist Xhanti Payi, on the line for us. And let's take a look at the numbers. The rand weakening